Let me actually start with Ambassador Vivek Karjo. Have you ever seen something like this? What's unfolding right now? I mean, India, Pakistan, yes, I just got back from Pakistan. India, Canada?
Barkha, not even in India, Pakistan have charges of the kind that Canada has indirectly leveled against India been ever made. Now, let me try to clarify that. In the international game, intelligence agencies accuse each other. Sometimes diplomats are also brought in and they are accused of contravening the Vienna Convention. But fingers are never pointed at the political level. That means at ministers. Because ministers don't get involved in operational matters. Now, in the case of Canada, quite clearly this round began with the NSA's meeting on the 12th of this month in Singapore. Uh, According to a report in the Washington Post, which was carried on the 14th, and it was clearly based on leaks to the Post, to the Washington Post by Canadians. It was mentioned that this meeting went on for 5 hours, and the Indian NSA was quoted as saying things. But the most important aspect of this was that the Canadians, an unnamed Canadian official, was quoted as saying, or perhaps it was not within quotes, but it was attributed to him, that he said that a senior Indian official and an official of RAW was involved, and I'm perhaps paraphrasing now, in orchestrating this kind of criminal activity, extensive criminal activity. And then he named a senior Indian minister as being the senior official. In my experience, and that goes back to 1975 when I joined the Foreign Service, such an accusation has never been made. Once, and I wrote this in an article, once uh, matters go out of the intelligence and diplomatic domains into the political domain, it becomes very, very difficult to retrieve the situation. Now, you mentioned uh, two other points I'll make very, very quickly. First point is that uh, the Canadians themselves asked for something which, in his evidence before this inquiry committee, this Foreign Interference Committee, the Canadian Prime Minister admitted is the Canadian wouldn't have done, which is to lift the diplomatic immunity of Indian diplomats. Certainly, the diplomatic immunity of the head of mission is never even asked to be lifted. That too is a new one. And to accuse the High Commissioner and five of his other colleagues as persons of interest in a crime, that is amazing. The next point that I wish to make is that uh, all this was done when the Canadians went on what I will now call a fishing expedition. They had some information, some intelligence, which they say pointed to the Indians, to the Indian intelligence agency. And they are asking the Indian intelligence agency, which they are accusing of cooperating with them. Have you ever heard something as ridiculous as this? That you make an accusation against someone and then you tell him, now you corroborate that accusation that I'm making. There has to be a sense of proportion here. And the very last thing, as far as the Five Eyes coming together, they are allies. Obviously, they'll come together. The American
Mm.
case you mentioned stands on a different footing altogether.
Okay, you say it stands on a different footing, except for the fact that both of these men are Khalistani separatists, and one was the lawyer for the other. They've often shared platforms. Gurpatwan Pannu was often seen in Canada calling openly for violence against India, and we'll come to to what's happening between America and India in a moment from now. I want to play out actually what Trudeau said in his deposition, where he's talking about the fact that at the first time when this is raised at the level of the Prime Minister between Trudeau and Modi, there was no quote unquote hard evidentiary proof that the Canadians had to offer. Take a look, and then I'll come right back to the panel.
Summit, and we had the opportunity of making it a very uncomfortable summit for India if we went public with these allegations ahead of time. We chose not to. We chose to continue to work behind the scenes to try and get India to cooperate with us. Their asks of us was, well, how much do you know? Give us the evidence you have on this. And our response was, well, it's within your security agencies. You should be looking into how much they know. You should be engaging. It's, oh, no, tell us what you know. Show us the evidence. And at that point, it was primarily intelligence, not hard evidentiary proof. So we said, well, let's work together and look into your security services, and maybe we can get that done. No, we're not doing that. It culminated with a conversation I had with Prime Minister Modi on after the end of the last session at the G20 in Delhi, where I sat down and shared that we knew that they were involved and expressed a real concern.
Okay, Daniel, how is this playing out in Canada? I mean, this statement, this deposition, obviously he's talking about a previous time. He's talking about when Trudeau was here for the G20 summit. But to say that at that point there was no hard evidentiary proof, and it was more about asking the Indians to look within our intelligence services, I mean, which country is going to sort of cooperate with that kind of tall claim?
Yeah, listen, I understand the Indian perspective here, especially if Canada ask access to India's security internally. Listen, I wouldn't give it to the Canadian government because you can't be certain that there aren't any, let's say, hostile ideological radicals who might be a bit outside the norm within the Canadian security apparatus, and that might undermine. I mean, I don't think you could really trust our agencies, considering the fact that the real scandal in Canada. So you're asking, how's this going in Canada? You guys might be ahead of us in time. You might think you're living in the future, but we're actually like 2.5 Trudeaus ahead of you, and these are Trudeau scandals. So the real scandal in Canada right now, what is Canada focusing on? Well, the fact that there's 11 traitors in the parliament, right? The security agency has said that there's 11 people currently sitting in office who are foreign assets. And Justin Trudeau has been protecting them for a while. And what Trudeau tried to do with India, so about 2 days ago, I mean, when Trudeau ruined or spat on or continued to, I guess, revive relations with India just to like drone strike it again, metaphorically, that's just a regular Tuesday in Canada, literally, right? By Wednesday and Thursday, we are different because he tried to do it like a rally around the flag moment, right? Everyone come together. We have an external enemy. India's coming at us. And the RCMP comes out with this accusation. So even the Conservative Party, when the RCMP says something, has to have, they did the rally with the flag. These are serious. We stand by. We want an investigation. Canadian sovereignty, good. They did the thing, right? And then even though the Conservatives rallied to the flag, the Liberals started to attack the Conservatives on this. Then he went and used the deposition to accuse the Conservative Party and the Pierre Poilievre of being responsible for the fact that 11 traitors have infiltrated his government because he won't get the security clearance to listen to the briefing. Now, this is all asinine because in Canadian politics, the leader of the opposition never really gets full security clearance to get these briefings, because if he gets the briefings, then he's like sworn to secrecy and he can't talk about things, right? So his chief of staff gets the briefing, so they would be able to tell him anything. But so the Liberals are going to say, well, some of these traitors, some of these foreign influence operatives are also in the Conservative Party. and I've been saying for years, yeah, the Khalistanis are trying to infiltrate every single political party. You want to know who is in the Conservative Party is a potential foreign asset? Call me. I'll tell you. Right? It's there. They're in the Liberals. They're in the NDP. They're everywhere. They're not that hard to find. So Polyev sort of called the bluff and said, yeah, release all the names. Yeah, release all the names. Release the names in our party, in your party, and everyone's party. Just release the names. You don't need to tell me. So this is where the Canadian public is on the scandal. Like, where are we? We're 2.5 Trudeaus ahead of you in terms of scandals. And it's sort of he tried to rally the flag moment. Now he's using his own foreign interference and the fact that there's literal treason in the parliament to try and attack the opposition who has not been in power in 10 years. So that's where Canada is on the foreign interference stuff right now. All this stuff, again, with India and us flubbing it, it depends where you live in reality in Canada, right? If you live in sort of mainstream media reality, if you watch the CBC or Global News, and then you read the Toronto Star or the Globe and Mail or one of the, sort of institutional Trudeau-funded media, then you only hear the Canadian line. Then you hear India's a wild terrorist state. They're behind everything. The Indian government, they ate your homework. That's why you were late for, like, it's ridiculous, right? But if you have a Twitter account or you're on any type of alternative media, you sort of see both sides. And if you're predisposed to not liking Justin Trudeau, which half the country currently despises the man, then you are more exposed to the Indian narrative, and a lot of people are sort of enjoying. One thing your people are very good at is the creativity of your online meme culture and your ability to be a bit razzle dazzle, let's say, on the internet. With it's going over well with the anti-Trudeau crowd, who is enjoying your assaults on the intellectual character of our glorious leader.
Let me ask you this quickly before I go to Tavleen and Sanjay. Is this at all benefiting Trudeau politically?
So it depends on where you think he would benefit. So in the traditional sense of, like, is this going to help him win an election? And with the normal populace, no, but that's all off the table. He's not going to win. Will it help him politically? You could say, right, by endearing himself to these hardcore radicals, his job when he leads office in a year, like, he's going to prance around the world like Greta Thunberg. He's going to tell you that you're racist and you're doing climate change and we need more diversity. And he's going to be doing this whole thing through Europe, and he's going to come and lecture you on all your faults. So by building up a strong base of, like, between the radical Islamists and the Khalistanis and radical leftists and all this different stuff. So when someone writes a book for him, like Justin Trudeau, My Memoir, Being the Greatest Man to Ever Exist, more Khalistanis will probably buy like 1 million copies to money launder to get him to make a speech to do. So in terms of, like, electoral votes, no, that's all off the table. In terms of millions of dollars in slush funds when he leaves office to prance around the world as some great hero of the left, yeah, he'll probably secure a few $1 million of dark money that way.
I think safer to say Daniel's not a Trudeau fan, but more seriously, I don't know how many Trudeau fans there are, Tavleen, and I think Ambassador Karju makes the kind of perceptive comment that even in India, Pakistan, I don't think we've ever seen a crisis of this nature. What do you make of it? And do you agree that you have to separate it from the Pannun case, that the Americans' handling of that case is very different from how Trudeau has handled it? Or do you join the dots between the two cases?
Look, I'm really not going to wrap myself in the Indian flag on this one. I'm no fan of Trudeau, and what he suffers in Canada is really none of our business in India. But in India, I have to say that I have covered the Sikh Khalistani story longer than any of you, and I've never seen it actually revived deliberately as political policy as I have by this government. Do you know, there was a Khalistan moment in Punjab, which I covered very closely. There was support for this stupid idea, but actually there has been no support for it for at least 2 decades. The only support for it is in Canada. So maybe they should give these guys a little bit of Quebec or something, stick them in the wilderness. They're very good farmers as well. So, they'll develop that area. But there isn't any support in India. And despite that, the Prime Minister and his ministers, senior ministers, have gone on record to charge the farmers during that agitation with all being Khalistanis. Then there was that time when they accused that poor lady from, that young woman in Bangalore and Greta Thunberg together of plotting with some Khalistani thing. Now, the thing is that when you do that, you're actually reviving something that is dead. And that really worries me, because let's not forget that the son of the assassin of Indira Gandhi is now an MP in Parliament. Amritpal Singh, who has been trying to do, to try and, recreate this Khalistani rubbish in Punjab, is also an MP. He may be in jail, but he got elected. So there is some, and as a Jat Sikh myself, I've always said that there's nothing worse to do with the Jat Sikh than to make him feel that he's somehow threatened. So I'm actually much more worried about the Indian government stirring this up for no reason. And as for the link between the two, with what went on with the American thing with whatever Patwant Singh, Gurpatwant Singh, that the American thing, they actually caught that man being bribed as an assassin. Now, if we're doing this, and I personally have no objections, it's part of a government's, the deep state, whatever activity. I wish we'd killed a few more people in Pakistan than we did. So, this should happen if we can do it, but we need to do it better, and we shouldn't be doing it in a fellow democratic country. So if we're doing it in America, we could be doing it in Canada. I don't know. And if we're doing it, we'll get the right guys and do it more efficiently.
If we're doing it, do it better. The point is that, the Americans, and I think a lot of Indians feel this Western hypocrisy. The Americans have always tom-tommed it when they've done it. And we don't know how many botched attempts they may have also encountered. But Sanjay, these are two separate points. I think I take Tavleen's point that, what is going on in Punjab, why someone like Amritpal Singh sitting in Parliament, is there a danger of ratcheting up something that is long buried in the past? And, you lost your entire family in that Kanishka bombing. You've paid a personal cost. I've spoken to you and many other sort of family members of those who were on board that plane. And one of the points that you've made again and again and again and again is that Canada has simply never had any interest in bringing the perpetrators of Kanishka to justice. Now, when you see this entire debate around Nijjar, around Pannun, the entire sort of Five Eyes, the sort of Western grouping that does intelligence sharing up in arms, what do you feel? What do you think?
A lot of shock, a lot of pain, Barkha. First of all, I'd just like to, continue on Miss Tavleen Singh's point. She's very correct. The Khalistan was a dead issue for 30 years, except in our hearts, who had lost our family members in the Kanishka. I think in the last 1 or 2 years, we've suddenly, of course, it's also due to Justin Trudeau and the NDP bringing it back center stage, but it's become, the heart and soul of our real politic here in India as well. We're talking of something. This was eradicated almost. We're seeing it come back into the picture. Now, a couple of things here. Nijjar is and was a terrorist, and I'm going back 2016. India sent a dossier to the FBI and CSIS. Nijjar was named there. When Trudeau came in 2018, Captain Amrinder Singh was the Punjab Chief Minister. He wouldn't let him land. He said, you give me Nijjar. So his bank accounts were frozen. He was on a no-fly list. Now you have the Prime Minister of Canada, who himself had put him on a no-fly list, and now talks about, this guy's Canadian citizen killed by Indians. You're right. They didn't produce any proof. Trudeau has admitted. And, what about all the other terrorists? What about the people linked to the Kanishka? They've not bothered. Now, as far as the investigation goes, we all know the dreadful track record of the RCMP, which Daniel will attest to. They've had the Robert Picton case, the Kanishka case, the Barnes Burns. I can name about 50 cases, major cases, that they've not either botched up or they've deliberately, sabotaged. How can we rely on these guys? They don't have evidence. They're relying on rumors. They're talking about Facebook posts of some gangster and blackballing a country. I think this is completely out of form. They still, if you still have the odd Canadian MP saying, let's reopen the case, let's reopen the Kanishka bombing inquiry. I mean, they've spent 140 million. We've spent 30 years doing it, and you still can't get it right. How do you expect to get this right? It's painful, and I think that India has done some harsh things. Canada has done some crazy things, like Ambassador said. Even with Pakistan, we've never seen this kind of behavior it's okay, if America and the UK start backing Canada, so be it. But as long as we know what we've done and we are in the clear, let's expose these people for what they are.
And I think you told me that there were nearly 100 children on board that plane, and I also interviewed the wife of one of the pilots of that plane. Do you feel like completely, in a sense, desolate that there will never be justice in this case?
I talk, Barkha, I mean, I can share this with you. Being one of the victims, and Daniel will know, I'm still on the RCMP list. I get, briefings from their police into the investigation. Kanishka is still an open case for the Canadian government and the RCMP and the Crown. So they're hoping for either a deathbed confession or, some kind of breakthrough at some point. So they still are spending money. I feel and I pray that someday they give us justice. There were 86 children, and I feel, they were largely...
And that's something I want to ask Tavleen before I come back to Ambassador Karju. You think if we do it well, and you shouldn't be doing it in democratic countries. I mean, look at this country where, like, I think Daniel would bear me out. Surveys show that a majority of Canadians are not even aware of the role of Khalistanis who have operated from their soil in this bombing. And a majority of those who died on board of this plane were Canadian citizens. They may have been of Indian origin, but they were Canadian citizens, Tavleen. So, I mean, I'm not advocating for extrajudicial killings. I'm just saying I find it difficult to work up any sort of empathy for Trudeau's argument at this point. I feel a kind of revulsion, at the things that he's saying.
I totally agree with you. The 85 bombing of that Air India flight was the worst act of terrorism. Not even the Bombay 2611, Pakistani thing was as bad as that. And, there were Khalistanis involved, and they were Canadian citizens, and they were never actually punished. And, for me, that is truly one of the most horrifying acts of terrorism that I have ever seen, anywhere in the world. It's inexcusable that a country like Canada, which must have better ways of solving these kind of things than we do in India, has not been able to bring these guys to justice. And to tell you the truth, if they had killed those guys, I would have said, fair enough. Just as if they kill Hafiz Saeed in Pakistan, fair enough. These guys are killers, and they cannot expect then to have, all the rights of non-killers, even if they're in a democratic country. So, I totally blame Trudeau for all that. And, as I said, I'm no fan of his. But, there are separate issues here. We've also got to recognize that India needs to behave a little bit more, like a mature democracy. Where, the hysteria in the Indian media at the moment, everyone, wrapping themselves up in the flag and yelling and screeching on television, it's pathetic. It's not the country that I was born into or that I was proud of. What is this hysteria? And the hysteria goes right into government. You've got people, politicians talking like, oh, we will do this, we will do that. Calm down, really.